Okay, John Mauldin is next. He is a renowned financial expert, a best-selling author, and the president of Millennium Wave Advisors. More than 1 million readers subscribe to his weekly newsletter, Thoughts from the Front Line, in which he shares his penetrating views on Wall Street, global markets, and economic history. His books have appeared on the New York Times bestseller list 4 times, and his latest book, called Endgame, The End of the Debt Supercycle and How It Changes Everything, has been called a must-read by none other than PIMCO CEO Mohamed El-Erian. Mauldin is a frequent contributor to the Financial Times and the Daily Reckoning, as well as a regular guest on CNBC, Yahoo Tech Ticker, and Bloomberg TV. He has also served on the Republican Party's Texas Executive Committee. Finally, he is the proud father of 7 children, 5 of whom are adopted, and he's the founder of Adopting Children Together, the largest adoption support group in Texas. Today, he will outline a series of massive changes that he expects to occur over the next 20 years. Please welcome John Mauldin.
Thank you very much. We've got a long place to go. We're going to actually talk about why the world is going to come to an end as we know it, and then I'm going to tell you why it doesn't make any difference. That's the speech. The rest are just bullet points. I want you to fasten your seatbelts. And this is from the Bank of International Settlements. Spent a whole chapter in my book on this. Every developed country in the world, with a few exceptions, has been leveraging up, and they are coming to an end of their own debt supercycles. Unfortunately, we're all doing it at the same time. That creates what's known as a crisis. Even more. By the way, the bottom lines on that thing, that's what they do if they cut health care drastically, cut Social Security, and most of them still end up hitting the wall. These are graphs of things that can't happen. We're going to talk about that. It's a very important economic principle. There's a lot of pain required. Greece is in a depression. They're losing 4% a year, and they're told that you've got to cut more. Well, what happens when you cut? You have less government revenues, you get further behind, your debt goes up. Duh. It's not like you, I know you have borrowed too much money, and now your banker says no, or mom and dad. And you've got to face the reality. You can't borrow any more money to maintain your lifestyle. Your lifestyle has to change. The Greeks are protesting. And my answer is, really, guys? You don't have any money. The Germans aren't going to give it to you. Not for very long. As soon as Merkel can figure out how to solve their banks, she's going to call Papa Andrew up and say, you can now declare bankruptcy. You are to wear blue shirts and green ties on the stage, and here's how you announce it. That's what'll happen. And we'll know when when the Germans are ready for bankruptcy, when the Greeks announce the next day. Now, in addition to my book, the most important book of the last decade, I'm getting ready to tell you what the most important book is. Not mine, maybe, is Carmen Reinhart and Ken Rogoff's book, This Time is Different, where they look at 66 countries and 250 financial crises over the last 200 or 300 years. And what's the one, there's actually several things they noticed that happen in all of them. They all say this time is different. We're smarter, we're better. It doesn't matter that we're building 300,000 too many homes in Ireland, a country of 4 million people. Oops. Or the US or wherever. Everybody says it's different, and it never is. The key is whether debt is excessive to relative to income. If you get too much debt relative to your income, you got to cut back. That's just the way it is. It's the way it is for any of us, and it's the way it is for countries. Financial crises occur when debt is excessive relative to income, whether it's public or private or both. It's not just public debt, guys. Spain looks like it's okay, but their private debt is monstrous. They have a wall in front of them, and they're racing towards it. They will become grease. Government actions, even when it makes you look like you're doing something, really don't have that much of effect. That's what all the academic literature tells us. It makes them feel good. Bill Clinton says, I feel your pain. Well, and I feel their pain too. I got 7 kids. And, they're going through their ups and downs of trying to keep jobs. Some of them are in that underemployed category. It is painful. The world is changing. What we're having is an experiment, unbelievably powerful and really pertinent experiment about the theories from 4 dead white guys. They all wrote books. They all have disciples. All their disciples think their book is the only received wisdom. And they all tell you that those other guys don't know what they're talking about. It kind of sounds like religion. But if you hold any one of those books to its logical extent, you walk into an alley and you're going to get mugged. I believe in worshiping at all their altars because they all have something to tell us. But here's what we know. This is an equation. This is an identity equation for all you mathematicians. It's true in all times, in all places of the world. Gross domestic product is equal to consumption plus investments, plus government spending, plus net exports. That's the rules. The Keynesians are right. If GDP increases and you increase government spending for a short time, about 4 to 5 quarters, you're going to increase GDP. Conversely, if you reduce G, you're going to reduce GDP. That's what the Austrians are finding out. They're being told, you've got to reduce government spending or increase taxes. Well, you're going to reduce GDP. That's the rules. Now, this is the next rule. By the way, we're still flying. I hope you're strapped in here. If you want to increase GDP, there's only 2 ways to do it. You can increase population. That's one way. By the way, we're going to find out that the most important thing in the world is immigrants. Our anti-immigration mindset in the U.S. is about the stupidest thing that we could possibly do. We should be giving everybody that graduates from a university a green card when they walk off. Keep your nose clean for 4 years. Don't go on the government payroll. You get to stay. Everybody except lawyers. The other thing that you do is you can increase productivity. Now, I got a problem for you. With few exceptions, and David's right, internet, some things, but with few exceptions, government spending doesn't increase productivity. We have to have government spending. We need police and fire. We may not be able to pay them what we've promised to pay them because politicians, to buy their vote, gave them more money than we can actually afford, and we're finding that happen now. State and local governments have cut 1% of GDP, $200 billion in the last year, and they're going to do it again. That's a headwind. You want to know why we're not growing? That's one reason. There's a lot of reasons, but that's one. You've got to increase productivity, but if you take money from Paul, who's an entrepreneur who wants to invest it, and you give it to Peter, who's going to spend it, well, yeah, Peter's going to spend it and consume stuff. And if you're Keynesian and you believe that the way to make the economy grow is to increase consumption, okay. But you really didn't increase consumption. You reduced his consumption to give it to him. And his consumption would have created jobs, because when you take money from the guys that are creating jobs, and net new jobs for the last 20 years have come from new businesses. Not small businesses, not big businesses, new businesses. Guys like you going out and starting something. By the way, when you start a business, you should know that 80% of you will fail within 5 years. And 80% of the remainder will fail within the next 5 years. That's the rules. But we're going to do it anyway because it's part of our genetic discipline. We twitch. We've got to start something. And God bless you, some of you will become Google and Yahoo, and some of you will become the local dry cleaners. But we're servicing a need and we're growing together. We've got to have savings and we've got to have productivity. And until we make it easier for entrepreneurs to make money, and we have stacked the deck against them, talk about government policies that need to be changed, there are some changes. Rogoff and Reinhart showed, not in their book but in subsequent research, that when debt gets to about government debt gets to about 90% of GDP, that it reduces potential GDP by 1%. That's what their database says. They're not sure why. I think it's because we're taking money from the government, from private savings and put it into public savings, so we can't increase productivity. But that's where we're headed, and we're headed in the US very soon. Much of Europe is already there. We need that growth to be able to increase income. One other thing that Tyler was talking about, GDP being stagnant, or income being stagnant. It's because private GDP, when you take out government, private GDP has been stagnant for 15 years. It's no wonder that private income has been stagnant. The only thing that's grown is the government sector and government wages. And if we tried to cut those back, with the exception of Ireland, everybody protest. You should pay the government more. You shouldn't cut us off. We're running into the wall. We're running it to the end of the debt supercycle. The biggest bubble in the world is getting ready to break, and that's the bubble of government. It's the bubble of government debt. Because if we don't deal with it in the US, I get to talk to a lot of, on all sides of the political stream of political leaders, congressmen, senators, so forth. They're beginning to get it. If we don't deal with it proactively and put ourselves on a glide path to getting our deficit below the growth rate of GDP, we will become Greece. That's the rules. You look at Rogoff and Reinhart's book. By the way, for those of you who aren't economic wonks, you can go to Barnes & Noble's because you're too cheap to buy the book. And it's a big old thick thing and it's intimidating. Read the first chapter and the last 5 chapters and you can get the entire book. They designed it that way on purpose. It's brilliant. It's readable. If you want to understand where we're going and what's happening, that's a book to read after my book. We're getting ready to start deleveraging in the US, one way or the other. If we start deleveraging, we're going to see recessions. That's the rules. That's what the McKinsey study shows us. And we'll have slow growth in recessions, what I call a muddle-through economy for the next 2 to 3 years, and it's slow growth for 4 to 5 years after that. Because we're going to have to cut our spending or increase taxes about 1% of GDP a year for 5 years running. Now, that first 1%, 4 quarters later, we've absorbed it, it doesn't make any difference. But then we're going to cut again, and then we're going to cut again, and then we're going to cut again. We're putting a headwind in front of ourselves. And the states and the local governments are cutting. And businesses are trying to figure out how to increase their money and to grow, and we've got the singularity coming. But it's a problem. Japan is a bug in search of a windshield. They're going to hit the wall. If their interest rates increase by just 2%, which is going to happen within the next few years because their savings rate is getting ready to go negative within the next few years. Why? It started at 16%, it's down to below 2%. They're dying. They don't have those immigrants. And the people are getting older and their mama-sans are saying, I want to turn my bonds into yen because I want sushi and sake. And they're not going to sit and hold their bonds because it's for the good of the country. They want their yen. And when they want their yen, they've got 10% deficits, 12% deficits in Japan, they're going to have to print. And the yen will go to 150, 200, then 250, then 300. The biggest problem I was telling 10 senators when I was with them about 2 months ago, it's not figuring the deficit crisis. We can figure out how to get there. Our big problem in the US is we just got to figure out how much health care do we want and how do we want to pay for it. That's it. When we figure out how to pay for our health care that we want, problem solved. The biggest problem you're going to have is to figure out how to deal with the trade wars as currencies go ballistic in the middle of this decade. That will be a problem. Now, I got good news for you. In 4, 5, 6 years, this is all over. We get through it. We either do it rationally in the U.S., Greece is going to hit the wall, maybe they'll do it, we don't know what the Europeans are going to do, but they'll figure it out. One way or another, they get through it. We hit the reset button, it's the blue screen of death. Remember, you'd get that, and you couldn't even reset your computer. You had to go and unplug it. Well, that's what we're doing. It's Jubilee. We're getting rid of the debt. We're going to have to write a lot of it down or inflate our way out of it or do something. It's default by any other name, but we get through it. So, in one sense, the end of the world doesn't make any difference because we're going to get to the other side. That's the good news. And now we come to the book that I'm going to write that all of us are more interested in. That's what I'm doing right now, the Millennium Wave. It's what the world's going to look like over the next 20 years. And I go from being a messenger of doom and gloom to pretty optimistic. The world is changing, and it's changing faster. I feel the need for speed. There are 7 huge waves getting ready to hit the world in the next 20 years. It would be like electricity in the telephone and steam engines coming along at the same time as stirrups and gunpowder. Think about, they didn't really have stirrups till about 1000 AD. How hard was it to think about stirrups? It made mounted knights possible. They were the middle age of tanks. But it changed things. Calculus, tacking into the wind, things that we think of as obvious. But all of those are going to happen together while we're discovering the new world. Now, I understand all of those other things were accretive. They had to happen one after another, but now we've got a monster base. And we're going to have a lot of things happen over 20 years all at the same time. The amount of change we see in the next 20 years is going to be more than we saw in all of the last century. It's going to be hitting us. And the purpose of the book isn't to be able to tell you what it's going to look like in 2032, because I don't have a clue. The purpose of the book is to try to convince you that it's going to change really, really fast, and you better strap in. In fact, what you better do is get your surfboard out and ride it. It'll be a lot more fun to ride than to let it hit you. First big wave, the one that empowers the rest of it, is wireless connectivity. Using mesh networks and other forms of wireless, we're going to see high-speed, ubiquitous bandwidth available for really, really, really cheap. We're going to see high-speed bandwidth in Kisangani and Mumbai, and it'll bring 1 billion new consumers, 2 billion new consumers into the world. But it'll also bring 30,000 Watsons and Newtons, Steve Jobs, into the world that never had a chance. They'll be able to get their education. Now, not all of them are going to end up becoming high school graduates or college graduates, but enough of them will, because to think that there's not geniuses out there ready to communicate, ready to come up with a new idea, ready to innovate, it'll be an exciting time. Measuring GDP in the U.S. and assuming a great stagnation, and I loved most of Tyler's analysis, wrong measure. The data point is the world. That border, when you fly over it, I do 200,000 miles this year, I have yet to look down and see a border. It's an imaginary line. The world is bringing me my innovation, and I don't care who brings me the ability to live longer. I want them to do it. If it's Russian, I'll even take Russian trucks. It's the always-on generation. It's what David Brin calls the end of privacy. Now, that has a lot of implications. I liked what Peter Thiel said yesterday. The less privacy we have, the more tolerance we need. We still live in a gotcha world. We watch the Republican debates. Oh, you did this, gotcha. That's why we can't get people to run for office that should be running, that have the intellectual heft and depth to do it, because they got too many gotchas in their past life. We got to get past the gotcha world. The next change is going to be brought on by demographics. We're going to get older. That's a good thing. I'm 62 years old. I intend to get a lot older. a really lot older. Now, there's a rule in economics. Write this down, boys and girls. It's profound. If something can't happen, it won't happen. Now, all of these charts that talk about $75 trillion worth of, debt that we have, unassumed debt in the U.S., that we're going to have to come up with and pay, and we're going to be forced to print money, and it's going to destroy everything. Bullshit. It won't happen. It can't happen. So therefore, the more interesting question is, what will happen when we get to want? Now, that's an interesting concept. What will happen when we get to won't happen? And we're going to be seeing that over the next few years. We're going to see a shift from the world being hungry for change to a lot of people going, oh, I don't know about this. Because they want their pensions, and their pensions, there's a technical economic term, and you can look it up in my book if you want to get more depth on it. It's called screwed. Oh, you're familiar with that. Okay. I forgot the intelligence of this crowd here. I mean, we don't have enough money to do everything we promised. And by the way, if France had our Social Security problem, they would think they had their Social Security solved. Okay? It's a lot worse in Europe. Oh God, the Japanese, I tell you, they're a bug looking for a windshield. By the way, Greece doesn't matter. Who cares if they go bankrupt? They've been bankrupt 150 out of the last 200 years. This is a shock. Japan makes a difference. Japan really does make a difference. Now, we got to go fast because I'm down to 7 minutes and 21 seconds, and I want to answer questions. The rise of the sovereign individual. What we're going to see is you and I are going to be fascinated with the inability of government to solve our problems. Our regulators are hopelessly behind the times. Is anybody here a big fan of the FDA and the fact that they're keeping drugs that are going, I can give you one after another, of people going outside of the world, U.S., in order to be able to get their life-changing drugs? We're behind the times. Our regulators are behind them. Tara Cowan was bang on about the failure and our inability of regulators. We're going to see the inability of government to solve our problems, and we're going to realize that it's individuals. And as individuals begin to solve their own problems, they're going to realize they can solve it from anywhere with the new power of computers and the internet and ubiquitous Wi-Fi. And they're going to become their own bosses in a way that we only dreamed about. The biotech revolution is here. Next year, we're going to see human trials for one molecule that cures every cancer that it comes in contact with in mice. But we'll see a human trial for it next year. Cirrhosis of the liver, human trial next year. Gone. Mike West at Biotime, he's going to be taking some of my blood. Well, I'll be the 117th person to volunteer. I want to see a few others. But he's going to take my blood, and he'll turn it into a pluripotent stem cell. Then he'll teach it to be a blood coronary system. Then he'll make a bajillion of those systems, and he'll inject it back into me, and I'll get a new heart system. Well, that's cool, except that last year he announced that he can take that 62-year-old adult stem cell and he can dial it back to 0. Now that's really cool. And then it's one more organ and one more organ and one more organ. We're on the way, boys and girls. It's closer than you think. I mean, Bloomberg just did an op-ed last week talking about the problems with, embryonic stem cells and how they were teaching some researcher that was 10 years behind the time announced that they'd figured out how to make one cell into an embryonic stem cell. It's like, really? That's so 90s. Read the literature. Job opportunity. There's going to be a need for people just to read what's going on in the relative areas of any companies so they can figure out how to put those innovations into your company. And if you don't have somebody figuring out what your people that are competing with you with and what they're doing and what other things that are happening that can be adapted into you, you're going to lose. You will be a dinosaur. You will die. That person that's the aggregator is going to become a very, very important part of any business. By the way, biotech will become a bubble by the end of the decade. It's going to look just like the gold or computers. What happens? Gold or computers in the 90s, internet. You have a few companies go 100 to 1. And everybody piles in because I missed that 100 times. And we're going to have some biotech companies go 100 to 1. And a biotech company, by the end of this decade, will be a test tube with 4 guys in white coats looking around it going, this test tube looks just like this test tube that went 100 to 1, and everybody's going to pile into it. It'll be a bubble. One time in my life, dear God, please, I want to be at the beginning of a bubble. By the way, that means you should go long life insurance companies because they're not going to have to pay, and you want to go short annuities because they're screwed. There's that technical term again. Real quick, you all know about nanotechnology, but what it's going to do, it's going to take manufacturing over in the 20s especially, back to its local source. That means that everybody that's providing cheap labor in China and wherever, oops, we're going to bring the manufacturing back to where it's at. That's a revolution. Jobs will start showing up here. You'll be running machines that print stuff, but okay, I grew up in a print shop. I did. I set type and, got ink in myself. Same concept, just a little bit more advanced printer. Robotics, cool. I went to Singularity University here 2 years ago, and when we got to the day where they're going to talk to us about robotics, I'm going, oh God, robots again. By the end of the day, I was salivating. I had not realized how far they've come. They're making progress. We might have robots in 2020. And we'll have AI. Of course, I've been hearing about AI since the 80s. Hadn't gotten there yet, but we're getting closer. Here I'm going to jump out on the limb. I know that's kind of unexpected for me. Energy is not going to be our problem. First of all, there'll never be a time when we run out of energy. All the people that say that are stupid. That's another technical economic term. They're Malthusian. They don't get it. We may run out of cheap energy, but we won't run out of energy. We adapt. But here's why I go out on the limb. I'm watching about 4 independent garage inventors that are working on ways to give us a refrigerator-sized electric producing process that'll be cheap, that you can buy, that you can put in your house, that can power your block. We will see in the next 10, 15, 20 years brand new ways to produce energy. Now, if one of these 4 guys doesn't come up with it, one of the 10,000 people around the world will stumble onto it. This cancer product that I was telling you about, they weren't looking to cure cancer. They were looking at an obscure genetic disease and they go, wow, this looks cool. It took them 7 years to figure out what was going on. Old blind Sal, as my dad would say, will find an acorn, and we're all going to benefit. Now, I know that's optimistic, but it's going to happen. Now, real quick, all of this is going to force changes in our geopolitical realities. Governments will try to figure out how to react, and people will more and more realize that governments are the problem, not the solution. We're going to see 2 billion new consumers. That's going to change everything, and those consumers are going to be able to sell to us, and we're going to be able to talk to them over high-speed internet, where it'll be cheap. I'll be looking at my 35, 40-inch screen. You'll be looking at your 35, 40-inch screen, and you'll be in another part of the world, and it'll be just like we're talking together right now. We'll see each other's facial movements, not the herky-jerky stuff that we see on Yahoo now when we do the IM stuff. Because when we were babies, we were genetically programmed to look up at our mother's face and read those facial expressions. And we've got to see those nuances, and that's why we travel to look at each other. But when our high definition is much higher definition than it is today, and it's 3D and we're talking, maybe we don't need to travel as much because we're communicating. We're going to see a massive infrastructure build out. Simply, some cases because we have to, because the stuff is crumbling. Some cases because we recognize that this is a way to create jobs and this is something we should do. Tyler's right. The trains in China are a boondoggle. But it's a good boondoggle because it means the future generations get to benefit from that. Just like the superhighways that Eisenhower built in the 50s. They weren't very full when people started it, but now we keep having to expand them to 2 lanes and 4 lanes and 6 lanes. It was built so that we could move armies from one side to the other of the country. Now we wouldn't even think about putting armies in trucks to move them if you needed to get them there. But that's, he solved a problem that didn't exist. But its infrastructure is good. We're going to replace scarce resources with cheaper, abundant resources. What's happening with the price of copper going up? We're substituting aluminum in China. Aluminum's cheap. We'll substitute cheap stuff. We're not going to run out. We just change, we adapt. There's going to be a revolution in retirement. We're going to have to try to figure out how not to retire, because we're going to live longer. I mean, how absurd it is it that we let somebody go to work when they're 30, we pay them Social Security for 30 years, and now we're going to pay them for the next 50? Really? We don't have that much money. It won't happen. You better figure out how to save your own money, kids. I'm 62. I could get Social Security this year. I'm going to take it. Actuarially, it's a stupid thing to do. I should wait till I'm 70. I'm going to take it because I want it now, and I'm going to give it to charity because I shouldn't get Social Security. Now, 5 years ago, if I'd asked, I was losing money every year when I started a new business. Government didn't want to come along and say, "Oh, John, you're losing money. Let's help you." No, I just lost money. I could have used Social Security then. It's all going to change. By the way, quick question, this could embarrass me. How many of you read my newsletter? Look at this. The rest of you look around. It's a free letter. Get a clue. This week I talked about why hyperinflation won't happen. I was talking about the Irish problem, the European problem. All of this stuff is explained in the Endgame. You can go to Barnes & Nobles and pull it down off the shelves and read it. Get hooked, and then you can buy it. Thank you very, very much. I'll take a few questions.
Can you hear me? There we go. We've got just a little bit of time for questions. I also want to make clear I said something that was wrong before. We are not going to lunch next. Riley Crane is next. Lunch is after that. So don't all go running out of the room because you don't want to miss Riley Crane. So let's take a few questions. Where is the mic? How about here on the left to get started?
And this guy down in the front, he's really jonesing to get the mic too. So, mic, please. Yes, sir.
Hi there. On the slide you had, I'm over on the right, to your left.
On your left. Over here.
Left, here.
Oh, yes.
You had a slide showing 2 billion new consumers. Tyler had all this concern about how technology wasn't arriving and therefore wasn't increasing median income. Tacitly, you both seem to believe that technology should increase median income as opposed to perhaps making more and more humans obsolete. Horses didn't survive the technological advance of the automobile. David Ricardo's comparative advantage never helped them. What's your thought on how the bottom half lives?
In the 1970s, the Japanese were beating our brains out. We had high inflation, interest rates were 15 to 18%, unemployment was crazy. It was the Carter malaise years. By the way, we survived Carter. This country can do anything. The correct answer to the question, where will the jobs come from, was, I don't know, but they will. And they did. Entrepreneurs will figure out how to utilize an underutilized resource, which is people. The American people are remarkably innovative, and they want to work. Or at least most of them do. And those that don't are going to have to figure it out. Now, is that a glib answer? The market solves everything. Yeah. But I can't give them enough money. I got 7 kids. I'm giving them enough money as it is. I got those on my watch. The reality is we're going to all have to become more responsible because we've run up against the ability of governments to take from Peter to pay Paul. And the more we take from Peter, the less we're all going to have. Now, is that arguing for responsibility? Yes. Do we need, we have 20% fewer new businesses started this year than we were 3 years ago because we have made it hard for businesses to get around. But that's where we have to go. It'll happen. We're all going to have to change. The world is changing, and it's going to happen fast. But that's a good thing. That's a really great thing. Yes, sir.
Let's do 2 more. We'll start over here, and then we'll come in front.
Yes, hi. What role, I noticed you mentioned the sovereign individual, but what role do you see transnational corporations and banks having after the government bubble pops?
I'm a transnational corporation. I do business in many parts of the world. I am the face of the transnational corporation. The smallest transnational corporation in the world. They still have their businesses. They figure out how to create value, and if they don't, they die. Now, some of them will die, some of them will prosper. They should be made to pay their taxes. GE should not be able to not pay any U.S. taxes. We need to restructure the tax system. I'm not against taxes. I just want to rationalize them. Transnational corporations are important. They deliver products. They deliver services. I think their role will be less important over time, but they're going to be around for the long period. The United States, by the way, is putting more money into R&D than the rest of the world. That's where you get growth and new stuff. We will be around for a long time. We will still be the world's superpower. That's just the way things are going to be for a while, whether we like it or not. I happen to like it. I'm a U.S. citizen. Go figure. Next question.
So there have been a number of financial bubbles in the past 20 years, and monetary policy and economic policy generally take a lot of the blame for that. And sort of those decisions come from neoclassical or Keynesian economics. Do you see the underlying economic models as failures? And if so, do you see sort of alternatives for the next 20 years?
The failure, part of the failure of our monetary system is that we bought into one of the theories of one of those dead white guys that said that the response to a lack of consumption should be easier monetary policy. So we got low rates combined with lack of regulation in the housing world, where if you had a pulse, actually you didn't even have to have a pulse. Dogs got loans. And, well, they have a pulse, but you know what I mean. So we had a lot of regulatory failure, a lot of stuff that happened. But it's like any other bubble. Something always comes along. We thought that houses should, as a collective conscience, we thought houses should rise 15% every year. The fact that nominal GDP was only rising 5% just kind of didn't click into the thing because that's too big a concept to get our heads around. But that's how bubbles are created. They end, they burst, we get to hit the reset button and start over. And I don't want to sound blasé about that means 10% unemployment, and if we have another recession, it could be 12%. Because I get that pain. I really do. I started out on the wrong side of the tracks in Bridgeport, Texas. I've been unemployed. I know what it's like to wake up in the morning at 2 o'clock not knowing how I'm going to make my payroll. So those are problems. But we get through to the other side by all of us individually figuring out how to solve our own situation. That's what we do as human beings. That's what we do as nations. And hopefully we don't do it by trying to take something from somebody else at the point of a gun. Do we have time for one more, or are we through?
We are out of time.
I'm around. Thank you. I hope you join my newsletter group and become one of my 1 million closest friends. Thank you.
John Mauldin, thank you very much.